Welcome everyone to the session on microarchitectural security tool. And we have three speakers for this session, and the first one is already on stage. The title of the presentation is TWE Bridging the Gap Between Reconfigurable Computing and Secure Execution. And Sergio will be giving the talk. The stage is yours.
Thank you. So, hello, thank you for taking the time and interest in attending this talk. My name is Sérgio Pereira. I'm currently a PhD student at University of Minho in Portugal. And today, in representation of my research lab, I'm here to talk about our work, Trusted Reconfigurable Execution Environment, bridging the gap between reconfigurable computing and secure execution. Let's start by looking at the landscape of modern computing platforms. No, now it's on. Okay. So, to handle today's demands for performance and efficiency across a wide range of applications, systems now rely on a mix of heterogeneous processors, what we call XPUs. Each of these units comes with its own execution model, interfaces, and trust assumptions, making them highly effective for their intended role. One widely adopted form of XPU architecture is the FPGA SoC, which integrates conventional CPU cores with reconfigurable logic on the same chip. The problem is that while each unit was originally designed to accelerate narrow, well-defined tasks, today's applications demands XPUs to handle more critical operations involving personal data, financial transactions, and even critical system control. This shift fundamentally changes the risk landscape, given that XPUs are tightly coupled on the same die. A flaw in one can open the door to compromise others. Taking as an example the FPGA SoCs, their reconfigurable fabric gives us flexibility and performance in a single chip. However, at the same time, these very features expand the attack surface. So, the reconfigurability can be exploited to insert malicious logic. The massive parallelism enables high bandwidth side-channel attacks. The tight coupling applications allows malicious logic to disrupt memory, and the shared resources create risks of converged channels, especially in multi-tenant environments. So, what has the industry dealt with the growing complexity over the years? Well, for more than 20 years, one of the most widely adopted methods has been the use of trusted execution environments, TEs, were originally designed to address the challenge of software complexity, since as operating systems grew larger, their expanding TCP inevitably introduced vulnerabilities. The idea behind the TE was simple. Create a protected region within the processor where sensitive applications remain isolated. Global Platform, an international standardization organization, formalized this notion as the T is a secure area of the main processor of a connected device that ensures sensitive data is stored, processed, and protected in an isolated and trusted environment. So, a common TE approach is to create a virtual secure processor inside the main CPU. Examples are Intel SGX, which has extensive profilation on cloud applications, and ARM Trust Zone on mobile applications. Since most FPGA SoCs use ARM cores, let's focus on Trust Zone. It splits the CPU into two environments. The secure environment, which runs trusted applications, TAs, and a lightweight OS, and the normal world, which runs a rich OS like Linux or Android, along with regular and possibility malicious applications. The transitions between the two and are managed by the secure monitor. In theory, this provides a clear line of separation between trusted and untrusted execution. In practice, however, the boundary has proven to be far more fragile. Let's take an example. Sorry. Okay, so our group has studied ARM Trust Zone extensively. In one of our works, we analyzed vulnerabilities in Trust Zone enabled TEs and found that trusted elements of most of TE systems runs with excess of privilege. This means that with privilege escalation attacks, if the trust OS gets compromised, the entire security collapses. Here's how that plays out. TAs are exposed to requests from the rich OS. If a malicious application exploits a flaw in the TA, it can hijack its control flow. From there, it can use additional bugs from there, it can additional bugs taking over the Trust OS itself, and with this, it can gain full control over the rich OS, the secure monitor, other TAs, and this is not just a theory. Several CVEs confirm it. Worse still, once Trust Zone is compromised, attackers can go beyond and processing system and into the FPGA fabric. So, on one hand, system designers are increasingly motivated to explore the use of reconfigurable computing. On the other, current TE systems often fail to account for the distinct threat landscape introduced by FPGA technology. This gap motivates our central research question, which is, can the reconfigurability of FPGA SoCs be exploited to provide trusted execution beyond software securing heterogeneous applications as well? Let's first consider the following threat model. Guided by the pitfalls of mainstream TEs, we consider an adversary is capable of controlling and compromising all rich execution environment software and hardware components, including the access to the reconfigurable port. However, we assume that access to the FPGA is attempted through standard operations, and that the configuration model is not compromised. We also account for the risk of TAs being compromised, either its hardware or its software, regardless of their implementation. Considering the threat model, now we establish the following concept, which we call it trusted reconfigurable execution environments. This concept aims to isolate the FPGA fabric for the rest of the system, isolate each TI execution environment, ensuring that each trusted application has its own hardware resources and do not share any with other TAs, nor with the TEOS. Remember, sharing is not caring. Ensuring protecting of sensitive data by offering services such as secure storage, provide access to cryptographic primitives, enable versatile TA synthesis and compilation, so which means TE for every flavor of TAs, such as software, hardware, or hybrids of both, and depend on a minimal and decentralized trusted computing base. And finally, maintain TE software portability. So, rather than treating the fabric as a passive accelerator, instead treats the entire programmable logic as the entire TE itself, while the rest of the SoC the non-secure environment. 3 further divides the fabric into 2 domains, the static region that we call a trust shell and the dynamic region that we call dynamic tiles. The trust shell constitutes of the TA manager to handle the loading and cleanup of TAs, an IPC to mediate communication, an attestation service, and core TE service, such as the secure storage and cryptographic functions. So, what are the challenges did we face bringing this concept to a commercial FPGA SoC. First, a core goal of TREE was to let the TA developers deploy their own applications without having to blindly trust the system designer. To achieve that, TAs must deliver as encrypted bit streams. However, the problem is that most FPGA SoCs only support partial reconfiguration with unencrypted bit streams, or with encryption tied to the same key as the full device configuration. So TREE solves this by decrypting TAs inside the FPGA itself using soft decryption IPs. In this way, we don't leave sensitive data in memory. Second was the cleanup and reuse. Once the TA completes, TREE must ensure no residual state remains. So each tile is overwritten with a blanking bit stream. Third, portability and allocation. Normally, partial bit streams are bound to fixed regions defined at design time, which limits flexibility. So if the tile is occupied with one, it cannot use the other. So we address this by enforcing uniform tile sizes and compiling and generating bit stream for each TA for all tiles. So at runtime, the manager can then load any TA onto any free tile. So moving on to our evaluation. We evaluate TREE on an entry-level FPGA SoC based on the Zinc UltraScale Plus architecture. And as baseline, we use OptE. It's a global platform compliant, trust zone assisted TE, running on ARM Cortex-A processor. In TREE, the software TAs require a dedicated execution environment, and so for this, we deploy the software core soft core, Cortex-M1 is instantiated as a partial bit stream. Regarding dynamic tiles, each tile follows a uniform resource profile with sufficient VRAM and reconfigurable logic to host either the Cortex and the execution environment for software TAs or for a combination of both custom hardware accelerator. So to evaluate the scalability, we measure this part. How trust shell resource usage grows with additional tiles. The overhead remains small, under 6% with a single tile and scales linearly. To evaluate the global platform support, we compared TREE against OptE and observed clear performance gains across most global platform client API functions, especially on open source with a TA loaded or the closed session. This is because once the TA is loaded, it performs better than switching worlds in the case of trust zone, and the cleaning process can run in parallel while the rich execution environment is free to use the main processors. To access the benefits of loading hybrid TAs, we compared configuring the tile with software and hardware parts together versus separately. We found that loading software and hardware together has no impact of the performance. That's because the bit stream, the partial bit stream, doesn't care if we are occupying every last resource or just a few. It has the same configuration time. While having the two separately, we have to account for the software size loading time. So moving on for a more interesting evaluation, we assess 3 real-world applications by testing 2 proof-of-concept applications that were originally developed for OptE. We first evaluated an access control authenticator, which is one of the most recognizable trust applications, commonly used for the biometric verification on Android device, for instance. And it's worth noting that this application was not modified to run on TREE, since it's a global platform compliant TA. For the purpose of this evaluation, in addition, we developed 2 additional versions, an hardware only and a hybrid one. All 3 follow the same flow: digest, verify it, and flag it. From the client perspective, the iteration remains identical for all implementations because it conforms the global platform model. That is, we open a session, we invoke a command, and we then close the session. So the results, show that the authentication task benefits strongly from FPGA acceleration, as the digest computation maps well on the hardware. In contrast, the checking loop comparing inputs against stored entries gains little since performance is limited by the secure storage interface, unless the design is explicitly parallelized. This explains the performance gains that we see on the plot. Next, we evaluated a lightweight Bitcoin wallet because it's a great real-world example since it has to deal very secure-sensitive tasks like managing keys and signing transactions, exactly the kind of operations that benefit from reconfigurable hardware. The wallet was also originally developed for OptE, and both the client and the trusted application ran on Tree without modification. We also built a hybrid version, offloading the wallet cryptographic routines into hardware to access the benefits of acceleration. In total, we evaluated 6 operations: checking for a master key, creating one from mnemonic, deleting a key, signing a transaction, and retrieving the public address. So the results show that simple storage tasks, such as checking or deleting a master key, perform similarly, since all operations gain little from hardware acceleration. From cryptographic heavy tasks like creating a master key or signing a transaction, the contrast was clear. Software TA on Tree ran slower, while the hybrid TA still achieved small improvements. Overall, this demonstrates that hardware acceleration effectively overcomes the overhead of running software on a soft-core MCU. Moving on to our security analysis, in the paper we covered both a theoretical discussion and a CVE-based evaluation. Here I will focus on the CVE side, looking at how Tree handles non-real-world TE vulnerabilities. We based our study on a comprehensive list of TE-related CVEs, and from this set we focus only on 80 critical CVEs that we organize by the affected component: the trusted OS, the trusted applications, the cryptographic libraries, hardware, and the bootloader. Our findings show that Tree architecture mitigates 69 out of...
Secondly, about the optimization urban systems, as we know that smarter infrastructure and resource management...
Okay, continue. Our findings show that mitigates 69 out of 80 CVEs we study. This is largely because Tree executes each TA with its own dedicated tile. So, without sharing resources, either other TAs or the trust shell avoids having the exploiting sharing flaws in the trusted OS or the TAs.
We believe that through AI,
we also address CVEs which exploit improper memory handling between the two states, since the TE and enriched execution environment are loosely coupled. So Tree doesn't need to rely on trusted memory allocation in the same address space as the rich execution environment. Now it's also worth mentioning what is not in scope, and Tree doesn't control which service a trusted application decides to expose. So any vulnerabilities that come directly from application itself...
Okay, thank you. So you spoke about how you're looking at it from being looking at AI to help cities be more data-driven, and also in terms of looking at smart infrastructure, managing your resources, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, community engagement, which is extremely important. And oftentimes when we talk about technology and solutioning, that's the group we forget. And that's the group. I think we spoke about it earlier, Gabrielle, the why. Why are we doing it? It's about how we want to live, isn't it, at the end of the day? So let's zoom out a little bit to the region. Alan, you do a lot of work in Asia Pacific. What are some of the big opportunities you see? I think Dr. Rizal just mentioned a few. Is that how AI is being used, or is there something else that we're missing?
Okay, I'm not going to answer that, but all right, so we were talking about CV mitigation analysis, and now I'm analyzing what was outside of the scope of Tree. Most of the critical CVEs that we found related because of the exposure of the development of TAs. It's out of our scope because it was responsible of the TAs to not expose themselves such that. And we also don't consider incorrectly boot process or incorrectly implemented cryptographic algorithms because we rely on them to have our trusted execution environment running. So moving on for our conclusion, in summary, we outlined the limitations of current TE systems in supporting today's heterogeneous architectures. We introduced three concepts, a TE approach that treats reconfigurable logic not a liability, but as a critical security feature, enabling system designers to leverage the FPGA fabric as an integral component of trusted execution, and we demonstrate three potential by running it with proof of concept applications. We also access how well it mitigates real-world TE-related vulnerabilities. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm now open for questions.
Thank you very much for a nice presentation, and sorry about the glitch. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay, I can start with the first one. So it's really, really nice work, and it's good that you have shown some use cases. And I just wonder, are there any requirement or limitation or constraint if we want to use your approach?
Yes, so we are moving the entire trusted execution environment within the FPGA. That means that we are very limited with its own resources. We limited by that self. We also consider in providing the DDRAM, but the most bottleneck was with software TAs because they required some sort of memory for them to process on soft cores, and FPGAs has a very limited VRAM. So we consider to partition the DDRAM, but then we are open a door for other security implications that comes with it. We also have, since we are dealing with SRAM based FPGAs, we don't have persistent storage, but we can do as the other, like the OptE does, that is encrypted the storage and save it on the rich execution environment. That's one way that we can work around with that problem. So the most bottleneck is around the memory issues. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last chance, are there any questions? If not, then let's thank the speaker again.
Thank you.
For the second talk in this session, the title is Improved Attacks Against Lattice-Based CAM Using Hints from Heartbleed, and the speaker is Zhiwei Li.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zhiwei Li from the Institute of Information Engineering, Chinese Academy of Sciences. I'm going to present my work, Improved Attacks Against Lattice-Based CAMs Using Hints from Heartbleed, which is joint work with Jun Xu, Jun Song, Hao Mengxu, Yan Jia, Yan Lizhou, and Lei Hu. Okay, here is the outline of my talk. As we all know, the learning with error problem plays a significant position in the field of cryptography. The LW problem is defined as follows. Given a uniformly random matrix A and a vector B, where B is equal to S times A plus E, then mod Q, the secret S is selected from a given distribution, and the arrow E is selected from another distribution. The aim is to recover the secret S. Okay. In order to recover the secret S, a common approach is to use lattice-based methods. For the LW instance, we can construct a lattice lambda B with the basis matrix B. By combining the roots of the matrix B, we can verify that the short vector ES1 lies in the lattice. To find the short vector, we can apply the BKZ lattice reduction algorithm, where the block size beta is a crucial parameter. In 2016, an estimation formula was provided for finding the smallest beta, as shown here. In this formula, beta is the value we want to find. Sigma is the standard deviation of the distribution. Delta zero can be estimated using this formula, and the lattice volume can be computed directly. By enumerating beta, we can determine the smallest value that satisfies this formula. Once we obtain the smallest beta from the estimation formula, the co-SVP model is used as a conservative way to estimate the security strength. Specifically, the security strength is estimated as this formula. Okay. Suppose S is the secret key in the LWE setting. We define two types of the hints. First, perfect hints. A perfect hint is that given a tuple VL where the inner product between V and S is equal to L. Second, modular hints. A modular hint is that given a tuple VLM where the inner product between V and S, then mod M is equal to L. In particular, when M equals to Q, we call this mod Q hints. By embedding these hints into the original lattice, we can construct a new lattice. And for the new lattice, the complexity of recovering the secret will be reduced. So there is an open question: where does the hint come from? Okay. At the Usenix security conference, Wang et al. Introduced a frequency-based side-channel technique called Heartbleed attack. This attack can be used to analyze multiple cryptographic schemes. For example, Wang et al. Used this attack to break the SIC scheme. Following this, Yu et al. Extended this side attack to analyze lattice-based cryptographic schemes and applied it to analyze the entity operation in the simplified Kyber and NTTIO schemes. NTT, or the number theoretical transform, achieves fast polynomial multiplication. Specifically, to compute the product of two polynomials f and g, we first transform both into the entity domain, multiply them pointerwise, and then apply the inverse entity to obtain the result efficiently. Here we denote height f as entity f and height g as entity g. For polynomial f, we use vector f to represent the column vector formed by its coefficients. In practice, we can divide the entity operation into two types. The first is the complete entity, used in schemes such as deletion. The second is the incomplete entity, which is applied in the schemes like Kyber and NTTIO. Okay, let's turn our attention to the incomplete entity used in Kyber. In Kyber scheme, the polynomial ring is defined as RQ, where n is equal to 256 and q is 3329. Note that in Kyber, there exists only a primitive 256 root of unite, and the following relation holds. In this relation, BR7I is the bit reversal of the unsigned 7-bit integer I. For polynomial f, the entity f is defined as follows. Each element in entity f is a linear polynomial. We also define the vector form of entity f as the column vector containing these coefficients. In the NTTRU scheme, there are similar conclusions. Note that in NTTF, every element is a quadratic polynomial. Similarly, we use vector height f to denote the column vector of all coefficients in NTTF. Okay, let's now review Yu Taoyao's work. In their work, the adversary forges a ciphertext and sends it to Alice. During decryption, Alice computes S times C. The adversary applies a side-channel technique known as Hertzspread to monitor the CPU frequency. If the CPU is running at a higher frequency, the adversary can extract a molecule hint about the secret. By repeating this process over and over, the adversary obtains multiple hints. Finally, these hints are embedded into the original LWE lattice, producing a new lattice that reduces the complexity of recovering the secret key. Specifically, in their work, the attack process is as follows. Step 1. The adversary forges a ciphertext in entity form. Step 2. During decryption, Alice computes the pointer-wise product of entity S and entity U. Because of the special structure of height U, the result is a vector in which all components except the first are 0. The first component is a linear polynomial, as shown here. Okay, by changing the value of Z0, the adversary can force either the constant term or the linear term of this polynomial to become 0. Both situations cause the CPU to run at a higher frequency, which can be detected via the Hertzspread attack. In other words, according to the forged ciphertext, the specific values of Z0 that triggers a CPU frequency increase must correspond to the cases where one of these coefficients becomes 0. Okay, so for convenience, assuming the adversary gets this equation, and they can use it to extract a molecule hint about the secret S, and they can do this repeatedly, collecting up to n/2 molecule hints. These hints can be embedded into the original lattice, producing a new lattice. However, they did not recover the secret key. Their attack reduced the security strength. For example, by counting the security strength from 118 down to 69. Okay, so what about NTTRU? The process started the same way, with the adversary forging a ciphertext in entity form, but this time its structure is different. Step 2. During decryption, Alice performs a pointer-wise multiplication of height f and height u. Now, because the special structure of height u, the result is a vector where only the first element is non-zero, and the single non-zero element is a quadratic polynomial. If any coefficient of the polynomial becomes 0, the CPU frequency increases, which can be detected through the Hertzspread attack. Therefore, the adversary enumerates possible values of Z0. Whenever a particular Z0 causes the CPU frequency to increase, it must mean that at least one coefficient of the polynomial is 0. Just as we saw with Kyber, the adversary can also obtain n/3 molecule hints in the NTTRU scheme. These hints are embedded into the lattice to obtain a new lattice. Okay. By embedding these hints, Yu et al. Reduced the complexity of recovering the secret key from 154 to 114. Next, I will introduce our approach. In our work, the adversary similarly forges several texts and sends them to Alice, using a Heartbleed attack to monitor the CPU frequency while Alice computes as time C. Further, the adversary can obtain several molecule hints. Instead of embedding these molecule hints into the original lattice, we generate a new lattice directly from these molecule hints. This approach allows us to quickly recover the secret key in simplified Kyber, and significantly reduce the complexity of recovering the secret key in NTTRU. Note that we did not perform an actual side-channel attack. Rather, we reused the results from Yu et al.'s Heartbleed attack. By default, we assume the adversary obtains n over 2 molecule hints. Then we express these molecule hints in matrix form and further divide the matrix into 2 square matrices, V0 and V1, where V1 is an invertible matrix. Similarly, we split vector S in two parts. Therefore, we obtain the following equation. Now, multiplying both sides of the equation by the inverse of V1, we obtain a new equation. Next, from the new equation, we can construct a lattice lambda b, which contains the short vector minus S1 prime, S0 prime. For this lattice, both the dimension and the lattice volume are known. We can apply the estimation formula to find the smallest beta. Okay, now let's take a look at our experimental results. For the simplified Kyber, our method is able to recover the secret key in just 400 seconds. Next, for the analysis of the NTTRU scheme, the adversary can obtain n over 3 molecule hints by default. Our key observation is that by forging different entity form ciphertexts, the adversary can obtain another n over 3 molecule hints. By constructing lattices from these hints, we are able to significantly reduce the complexity of recovering the secret key. Next, I will explain how to obtain the additional n over 3 molecule hints. Step 1. The adversary forges a ciphertext in entity form. Note that the structure of this forged ciphertext differs from that used in previous work. Step 2. The adversary computes the product of hat f and hat u, where all terms are 0 except for the first one, which is a quadratic polynomial. If any coefficient in the polynomial becomes 0, the CPU frequency increases, which can be detected through side-channel attacks. For convenience, we assume the adversary is able to obtain this formula, which can be converted into a molecule hint. By repeating this process multiple times, the adversary obtains multiple molecule hints. In short, the adversary is able to obtain 2n over 3 molecule hints. Similarly, these hints can be expressed in matrix form. Note that in the NTTRU scheme, the polynomial f the polynomial f is defined as f equals 3 times f prime at 1. Therefore, vector f is equal to 3 times vector f prime, and then at this vector. Okay. As a result, we obtain the following matrix vector multiplication. For the first column of the matrix, we can reduce it such that all elements are 0 except for the first element. At this point, using the matrix shown in the red box, we can drive a new equation. Next, we apply Gaussian elimination to the new equation. This operation reduces the number of equations and the number of unknowns. Thus, we assume that after Gaussian elimination, we have eliminated t unknowns. At this point, we obtain the final matrix, which has 2n/3 minus t rows and n minus t columns. The next steps are similar to the procedure we used for Kyber. From the equation above, we can construct a lattice for which both the dimension and the lattice volume are known. Here, t represents the number of unknowns that were eliminated. Using the estimation formula, we can estimate the value of beta corresponding to different values of t. From the table below, after Gaussian elimination, the minimum beta is 117, whereas without Gaussian elimination, the minimum beta is 139. Finally, let me summarize our work. First, we discovered that lattices can be constructed from molecule hints, which facilitates secret key recovery. For the simplified Kyber, we achieved complete key recovery. For the NTTRU, we significantly reduced the complexity of recovering secret key. And for our future work, we plan to study how to recover the NTTRU secret key and to implement side-channel attacks in practice. This is my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have questions for the speaker?
Thanks for the talk. So I'm wondering about the number of hints. So if I understand correctly, if for the Kyber, if you have like n.5 hints, then this works. But what if you have less? Is there just no way to make it work, or like is there a success rate then, or what happens essentially?
Sorry.
If you have less than n.5 hints, can you make it work or no?
We provide a new perspective to how we use these molecule hints, and from our work, we can recover the secret key. While in previous work, they reduce the security strength.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have like less hints than what you need, if there's just a way to make it work or no. I mean, we can take it offline. I mean, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your work. The slide mentions the complete key recovery in 400 seconds. Does that include collecting the Hertzbleed measurements, or is this only the computation phase?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I will come to you later. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? Maybe let me ask a maybe easier one. So in some of your slides, you mentioned simplified Kyber. Could you maybe clarify what that means?
Oh, okay. Compared to the standard cable, the simplified cable, no compression and decompression. In the attack model, the adversary forges a ciphertext with special structure. So if the compression and decompression were presented, such special structure would be difficult to maintain. Okay, for ease of discussion, we have removed the compression and decompression operations.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's thank the speaker again. For the final talk in this session, the title of the talk is Let's Do It Using Intel's Extended Hardware-Software Contract for Secure Compilation of Crypto Code. And Yan Yanchar will be giving the talk. The stage is yours.
All right. Thanks for the introduction and the professional name spelling. So, my name is Yan Yanchar. I'm a PhD candidate at the Center for Research on Cryptography and Security in Czech Republic at Masaryk University. And I'm going to talk about this joint work with a lot of these lovely people about Let's Do It, or using Intel's extended hardware-software contract for secure compilation of crypto code. Right, so first of all, what is constant time? What does it even mean, right? So we usually understand it as that execution time is independent of secret data. But it doesn't necessarily mean there's like an attacker with a stopwatch going like start and like stop, right? But this is the general idea. So what do we do with it? Luckily, you all been to the best paper talk, so you already know we do constant time programming, right? So we avoid branches on secret dependent data. We avoid memory lookups on secret dependent data, and finally, as Kyber showed, we should avoid secret-dependent inputs to variable time instructions. So this is going to be the focus of my talk, right? This third point. As I mean, over the years since timing attacks have been introduced, this point I think has seen the least amount of attention, right? That the first two ones are kind of easy to check. This last point, you need to be down low in the assembly to verify this. However, I mean, constant time programming, constant time is much more complex, right? There have been many talks. There's compiler interference, right? So as Matthias mentioned during his talk, a compiler can just mess with your code if you're not doing it in assembly. There's speculative execution, so all of these things need to hold also kind of speculatively, and other things. There's cache design that means, I mean, sometimes you can access these things if you're just really sure you're not leaking via cache. And finally, there's dynamic frequency scaling, right? So just as the previous paper showed, you know, hearts bleed, all of this stuff. There are other things that affect timing. So, yeah, so what is the consequence of putting secret data into variable time instructions? It's Kyber / division by a constant compiled to either soft or hard division. That was enough for key recovery. So which instructions are actually constant time, right? So previously this was sort of ad hoc, you know, this was folklore. So you do some measurements, you look into some documentation, you do some micro benchmarks, and sometimes on some microarchitectures it's the mole, sometimes it's the div, you know. But can you really trust this? Will this change in the future? Who knows? Luckily, manufacturers introduced these modes. So this Intel do it, ARM did, which also applies to Apple Silicon, RISC-V, ZKT, ZVKT extensions. And these are essentially lists of instructions which are guaranteed to execute in constant time with regards to their inputs if you enable some mode on the processor. And with this, we can have some sort of future-proof constant time where if you ensure you just use these instructions on secrets, your code should be fine. So let's jump in. Let's look at these a bit more. Yeah, so as I said, these are these lists of instructions where they have input-independent timing. For these first two, so for Intel do it and ARM did, these are really like modes. So first of all, you need to enable them for these guarantees to hold. But you can do that using some sort of model-specific register. Whereas for the RISC-V case, these are instruction set extensions. So if the processor claims it supports these, then by default, these instruction sets should just be constant time. There is no mode, nothing to enable at runtime. So Intel Do It, this stands for Data Open and Independent Timing. You can check it out on the link there if you have the slides. And there's really some nice documentation about what it is and which instructions are covered. So Intel Do It, well, they say that it guarantees data independence of timing on supported newer architectures if it is enabled. So if you have an architecture where it's supported, you need to enable it to have these guarantees. However, if you have an older architecture which doesn't say that it supports it, these guarantees hold by default, right? So they are somehow, or should I say this, backward compatible to before this mode was introduced. And also there's this statement by, I think, an Intel employee that Intel expects the performance impact of this mode may be significantly higher in future architectures. So currently, some benchmarks show that this mode doesn't really do much, maybe even anything. But there is an expectation of some aggressive optimization in the future, so this will stop that from messing with your crypto code. However, there are some notable instructions missing. So division, right? Division is not do it, so you just need to do the countermeasures that were just explained in the West paper talk. Also rotates, so scalar rotates are missing. This will become a problem later on as I show you. And floating point operations. So with the standardization of Falcon, there has been quite some controversy on PQC forum with, what do we do with constant time and even others like leakages of floating point operations. And finally, this list, there have been just no changes over its course, which is actually a good thing, right? Like you want these guarantees to be sort of constant over time or even like increasing the amount of instructions. You don't want missing instructions. So for ARM, this is called DIT, and it holds from this version on, and it also is somehow inherited to Apple Silicon. And again, this guarantees the data independence if it's enabled. However, if we scraped all the ARM documentation, which sort of changed formats in between, but somehow we reconciled all of this, and we saw that this list changed quite a lot. So this is just an excerpt of some of the changes. These are not all the changes. And we see that the documentation, removed some instructions, which if you were relying on those being constant time with this mode enabled, now you may be in trouble. Also, it may be unclear if you have a processor, which of these sort of versions of the specification the processor is actually adhering to, right? Like you would have to find that out somehow yourself. And finally, there's the RISC-V ZKT and ZVKT. So these are for the scalar and vector instructions respectively. And they just guarantee data independence if the processor says it supports them. There were no changes. That's nice and static. And there's one notable inclusion. So this is the seed register. Basically, this is your entropy source, right? So where you get your entropy, they claim that it's constant time with respect to the entropy that you get. So you can get random data, and you can know, that you're not leaking there. For example, the RDRAND, the Intel instruction for this, sorry. And that's not included in the do it list. I don't know whether it means that it leaks or whether it's just an oversight, but that's I think an interesting future work. All right, so where do we use all of this, right? How do we use do it? How do we ensure this? There's first of all, you can do the Volgrand thing as was explained in the best paper talk, but let's do it something more formal, something with a bit more guarantees. So Jasmine is this language and compiler for high assurance, high speed cryptography. You can also check it out on the link there. And it's low level, so it's assembly-like sort of, which gives you a lot of control and performance. However, it's also formally verified, and the code that it uses, you can argue about it quite a lot, which gives you this assurance and security. And also it's been proven to preserve constant time, so it will not mess with you and your code. And what I personally like about it the most is that it's in active development for now over 10 years. So I looked at the first comments some 10 years ago, and people are still sort of working with it, which is not true for many research projects. It supports x86, 64, and ARM v7 assembly. So on the left, you can see just some example Jasmine code for some string length function. I mean, to me, it's pretty readable. It's pretty C-like, yet you can also make it very close to assembly. And on the right, you see the compile assembly for this piece of code. So how do we make Jasmine do it? Well, first of all, Jasmine has a CT checker, right? So or even a speculative constant timeness checker, which means you take a piece of Jasmine code, you take your program, you annotate inputs to certain functions with whether their inputs are secret, like a key, or public, like some, I don't know, in this case a nonce, let's say it's a public nonce. And then there's this type-based speculative constant time checker, which will go through your program, sort of try to propagate these annotations. And if it comes to a point where you're doing something wrong with a secret value, it will give you an error. And you use this using this constant time tool. So for example, this is a simple Jasmine function, and this will just work. This will pass the CT checker, right? There's a branch there, but it's on a public value, so you're fine, you don't care. However, this will give you an error. You're branching on a secret, you should not do that, that's big bad. But this, in a previous version of Jasmine, I mean, actually some years ago, but this would pass this verification, right? So you have a secret value x, and you're dividing it by some constant, which can compile to a division instruction, which would leak, and we don't want this to pass. So how do we make it do it? Well, we just extract the list of do it instructions, we map them to these Jasmine instructions, and then we modify the typing rule for instructions. If the instruction is not do it, meaning it can leak, it can be variable time, then all the arguments must be public, right? You just don't allow this kind of secret flow to these instructions. And voila, that's it, right? So this was a very simple change indeed, but how do we use it? Where do we use it? And for how much of a performance impact will this be, right? If we just restrict ourselves to just doing do it instructions on secret, what does that actually mean in practice for crypto implementations? For that, we look on libjade. So libjade is a collection of popular crypto primitives in Jasmine. It targets x86-64, and it contains like both sort of reference variants and optimized vector variants using AVX2. This is roughly how it looks like. So I mean, you have hashes, camps, sort of max, scalar multiplication, analytic curve crypto, softs, sort of authenticated encryption and stream ciphers. And these arrows that you see, these are like code sharing, right? So of course, Kyber is using Shake. So how do we make libjade do it? Well, luckily, a lot of libjade is already do it, right? So if you just run the CT checker with the do it option, it turns out that all of these implementations with the check mark, they're already do it by default. As you can see, a lot of these are actually vector implementations. So do it contains a lot of vector instructions. I would say the coverage is better there, or perhaps it's due to the fact that vector implementations are sort of, yeah, I don't know, it's perhaps by luck, but that's how it is. So what about the other implementations? Well, we will enable do it in the CT checker, run this, fix the error somehow, and repeat until we have nice do it constant time code. So we did that, and here are some takeaways and mainly pain points, mainly things we want to see better. So first of all, and the biggest issue, as you will see in performance, is the missing rotates. So there's the rotate left, rotate right, the simple scalar rotate is not on the do it list, which is really bad for things like Cha-Cha, stream ciphers, or just lots of symmetric key crypto that does a lot of rotates in like the main core sort of round function or so on, because you need to replace that with 2 shifts and an OR, and you need an extra register, which in this case, for the Cha-Cha implementation, which was optimized to use like the full register bank, this meant some spilling to stag and so forth, but also just replacing 1 instructions with 4 in the main core loop is gonna hurt quite bad. Second of all, there was this bswap that's missing, it's not do it. So for those of you that don't know, bswap is it's like a indianity swap instructions, right? So you have it swaps the bytes around in your word. And this was luckily used only, I think, at the input point of I think Chitchanok. So it was not used in like an iterated way. It just went through the input once, but also it was quite a performance hit because you need to replace it with actually a lot of shifts, like bit banging, masks, and so on. Actually, this continues below just like 2-3 instructions more. And finally, there were some miscellaneous sort of vector loads missing, or interestingly, like a double precision shift is missing, which also hurt some implementations. So what about performance? Well, first of all, as I said, these that were do it by default, they don't need to change at all. These were not do it, but the changes were so minor that I don't think you can even like tell, right? Like there's a 0.6% of a performance impact, so that's good. We are fine here. So these are the good ones, but what about the bad ones? Well, these are the bad ones, right? So these are only reference implementation actually. So maybe that's good news. Like if you're using vector stuff, you will not be impacted like this. But the reference implementations of things like Cha-Cha got a pretty big hit of like 65% in a performance impact. Something like SHA-2 got only like 40%, but there's, yeah, that's quite a hit. And I don't think there's really much to do. If rotate is not do it, then you just need to get away with this. I don't think there's some magical trick to make it happen much faster. So now, let's say, what can we do about this? Like we as in the community, or perhaps the platform, the ISA developers. First of all, be as for platform ISA developers, try to be as specific as possible, right? So for the rotates, for example, it's quite likely that the rotates are actually constant time with regards to the value that's being rotated, and the only thing that's leaking is the amount. And we would be fine with this in Cha-Cha, right? In Cha-Cha, you are rotating, but the rotation amounts, they are all public, right? So they're constants, right? You don't really care about that. If the do-it list were to be more granular, and it would say, okay, rotate is do-it with respect to the value, but not with respect to the rotation amount, this would basically mean that we wouldn't need to touch and wouldn't need to take this performance hit. Also, it would be really nice if we didn't have to scrape manufacturers' websites and there was some machine-readable format when sort of deciding or doing the trade-off of what to put on the list. Really consider use cases in cryptography. I think this rotate thing is really should be there if possible, at least in some architectures. And then limit changes to the guarantees, right? Because I mean the guarantees are only as good as to how static they are. If they change, well, then you cannot really trust them. For the crypto developers, I really suggest this move towards this do-it-did ZKT implementations, right? I mean, you've seen on the best paper talk, a lot of implementations have secret flows to variable time instructions, and if you enable this, we should get rid of it. And enable the do-it-did mode on runtime if you can, if you have the API. For the kernel developers, it would be really nice to offer like a user space API for do-it control so that crypto developers can actually do their job. And then this basically same as crypto developers, right? So if there's some in-kernel crypto, it better be do-it. And finally, for the compiler tool developers, yeah, adding some options to limit or validate the generated assembly to be do-it, did, or ZKT, ZVKT. That would be really nice. I think that's pretty far-fetched, but let's try to move towards that. So, to conclude, I think there is hope for constant time if people at various levels of the stack collaborate, right? So, if the processor developers, compilers, and people, and the crypto developers collaborate, I think there's some way to make this happen. In the past, this didn't really work out, I think, quite well, but I think we can learn from that and do something nice here. There is also this nice paper, this pessimist case for constant time. So I suggest you also read that. That's sort of the opposite to what I'm saying here. And finally, you should really check out the artifact, Jasmine and libjade, and you should just do it. So that's it from me. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. Do GCC support this?
Do what?
GCC.
No.
No, why?
No, I don't think there's any sort of support in general purpose compilers for either limiting or arguing about do it. It's just it didn't reach that stage yet.
Or maybe only Jasmine for now support.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because the first time I made Jasmine. Another one, how to enable this instruction extension? Is it through system call or in the kernel, and how is it any commands to enable it?
Let me see here.
In Intel.
In Intel, yes. So in Intel, there's a package by Intel called MSR Tools. If you install it, and if you have root, you can use it to write to this model-specific register. You just write 1 bit, and it's turned on.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. I've got a question about the performance number that you gathered. So you showed that the implementations that are already just using the do it instructions has basically 0% overhead. So is that compared to do it disabled, or is that compared to do it enabled?
So these benchmarks were really run with just without taking do it enabled into account, right? So here we are not. There are other independent benchmarks that show that enabling do it doesn't actually, like on current processors, do much, like with regards to performance. So we didn't run that. So these benchmarks only really show what you lose due to the code change, what you lose due to adjusting the instructions, not what you lose due to enabling do it by itself.
Okay, thank you. And is it known if do it really does anything, or is it like unclear?
Certainly the two things that it mentions, that it disables the data-dependent prefetcher and the fast stored forwarding prefetcher, that's clearly documented. It sure does. And if it does anything with regards to the instructions themselves, like latency of those, you have to do micro benchmarks, and it's unclear at this point. But pretty much on current architectures, it doesn't do much, right? If anything, it's very little.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thanks for a very interesting talk. You've probably considered this, and it might be a lot of work, but you need a reference implementations because not everything supports AVX2, of course. But nowadays, every Linux is compiled to require SSE2, the very old vector standard. Will it be possible to borrow at least some shifts from that set? Because I know it's a very limited set of vector instructions. I don't know if that would work.
That's a good question. I think for people more from libj than Jasmine, which I am not, it's also limited to what instructions are implemented in Jasmine, right? So first step, you need that. But then that's an interesting direction. I'm not sure how much of that is covered by do it, right? That's the biggest limitation of it all. So
I have no idea. I hope you would know.
Let's grab the site together and we'll see. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? If not, then let's thank the speaker again.